Hi, thanks for joining us today on Shining Stars in South Florida Business. I'm your host, Danny Poulos, and our guest today is Rick Capone from Foreign Auto Service. And I know Rick a very, very long time, and he's sort of a mainstay in business and local business around here. So we're going to learn a lot about Rick's history and what his specialties are. So thanks for coming in today, Rick. And
glad to be here, Danny.
Tell them how this all started for you.
Well, it was my love of cars, in high school and hot rodding and so forth. And then when I got a little bit older, and actually 21, I had switched to sports cars, and import cars. And so I went into business. I mean, my dad told me, look, he said, if you got to work for somebody else, they're going to pay you what you're worth, and you can't live that cheap. So I went into business.
And you did a little race car driving prior to that,
yeah,
too, right?
Yeah, well, that was my passion. And I started, racing sports cars and eventually into open wheel and Formula and some long distance stuff.
Wonderful. Very exciting. So, since you've been doing it for so long, what do you think has changed in the automotive repair business from years past and the way things are now with the newer cars? Anything in particular?
Well, yeah, the biggest difference is the electronics. Cars today are just, unbelievably loaded with electronics. I think a new Mercedes has 18 computers that have to talk to each other.
So you got to be an IT guy, too, not just a mechanic.
Just about, And, when one of those computers go down, they all can go down. And you have to have the right test equipment. The equipment we have to diagnose and program and so forth on those is $80,000.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like going for an MRI. Most shops don't have that capability. The dealerships do.
Right.
But most independent shops don't, except the Bosch service centers. There's only 2 in Palm Beach County.
What's that mean, to be a Bosch service center?
Well, Bosch makes 90% of the electronics in like Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, and so forth. And a few years ago, they were worried, well, actually about 10 years ago, they were worried that the only place that their equipment could be serviced was at the dealerships. And that was a problem.
Right.
So if a car broke down someplace, other than going to the dealership, you had no choice. So they started a program of Bosch service centers, which allowed us, the independents, to get the training, become a Bosch service center. You had to qualify for it. And then they give you all the technical information to repair these cars.
And from the consumer side, that means you don't have to spend dealership prices when you have something serviced on your car also.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And funny enough, the dealerships really didn't, at first, they weren't real happy about it. But then they realized if somebody in Arkansas happens to have a Mercedes, there may not be a dealer for 100 miles. So now they have the option to send them to, a Bosch service center for that repair.
Now, I know that you've recently brought your son into the business, too. Your son, Bryce.
Yes.
So how's that all working out, and how did he get started?
Well, Bryce was coming to the shop when he was a little kid, and he's never had another job except at my shop. He's never worked anyplace else. Yeah, and he's 27 now, and I'm 66, and I was ready to retire. So I said I was thinking about selling it, and he said, "Well, I want to buy it."
No kidding.
Okay, so it's yours, and that's it.
And he already knows your customer base because he's been hanging around there for all these. I remember him from when he was a little kid.
A little kid, yeah.
So he's stepped right in. He's also stepped into the racing side of it too, right?
Well, yeah, they raced for a while, him and his brother Ricky, but then our sponsor had passed away. But Ricky went on to go with the Tequila Patron team, ESM, and they're doing the World Series.
Your whole family's all about cars. You're talking to the right people when you need some service on your cars here. So what would you say are your particular areas of expertise?
European and electronics. We do some of the high-end Asian cars. But electronics mostly. The cars today, they just don't break down mechanically. The engines, transmissions, the crankshafts, the machining capabilities is so far advanced from 20 years ago.
That's interesting.
They do heart surgery, with robotics. And the machining capabilities at the factory on crankshafts and machining the rods is so accurate that unless you overheat the motor or run it out of oil, they'll go 200,000-300,000 miles.
That was my next question. So mechanically, cars are actually lasting longer?
Absolutely.
So people out there who don't know that and their cars are approaching 100,000 miles and think, well, that's it, I'm going to start to have problems. That's not really the case?
We have customers come in all the time and they go, and especially the older crowd, my car has 110,000 miles. It's just getting broken in.
If it's how old? When do you think that those big changes started happening where cars would lasted that long?
That's like the human body. Depends how they maintained it. If they followed their maintenance schedule, especially if it's garaged, a 15-year-old car is nothing today.
Really?
If it's parked outside, maybe by the ocean, it start, a little bit of rust, then, there may be time to change it.
That's so interesting. So, for people out there, don't think that you don't get desperate, when you see those miles come on, but it's important to be working with someone who can handle the electronic side and the computer side, or you're just not going to know any better. You're going to think everything's going wrong, but maybe not.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I can just tell you that he's somebody you can trust. He's a pleasure to do business with. He is a shining star in South Florida business. And Rick, tell everybody where the shop is and how they can reach you.
Well, the shop is right on US 1, just south of North Lake Boulevard, about a mile south, right across from the McDonald's. So it's 3400 Broadway or US 1, and it's in Riviera Beach.
Great, Rick. Thanks so much for coming.
All right,
It's always
Danny.
a pleasure to see you.
You too.